Hey everybody, welcome to Twitch Talk Thursday. My name is Nate Simmons. I am one of the board members for the NSESA and also the coach at Louisville, Nebraska. We are here tonight with a new sponsor for us this year. This is Coach Yang from Wichita State. So thanks for joining us tonight.
No, it's my pleasure. And yeah, like Nate said, my name's Travis Yang. I'm the director of esports here for Wichita State. Been working in collegiate esports for about 4 years now. Prior to this, I was the head esports coach for Texas A&M San Antonio for about 2 years. And my first position in the industry, I was the assistant esports coach for Ashland University up in Ohio, actually, which is a private school. So I've gotten to kind of travel around the country, start some programs, but now here at Wichita State, their program was actually established, I believe, since like fall of 2019. So I've been able to come
Okay,
in and kind of just hit the ground running.
awesome. So that's a little bit of your work history there. Tell us, how did you get started in this?
Yeah, for me personally, I'd imagine as a lot of students are, a lot of viewers are, all throughout high school, all throughout college, I was a huge gamer, sometimes to my own detriment, academically. But yeah, very passionate, and I ran a StarCraft 2 team for eight eight years pretty much. Started all the way in high school, and I stuck with it, and I really enjoyed the management side of things. And that led to me growing that team to a point where we were sending players across the country to MLGs, to lands on the East Coast, stuff like that. And sure enough, it just so happened that right around 2018, which is when I graduated from Mizzou, um, that was that first big wave of varsity esports programs. And so I was able to kind of fortunately land a full-time position up there in Ohio as the assistant coach, working with someone that I had actually met through my team in StarCraft 2.
All right.
Um, so yeah, it just worked out really nicely.
All right. So which race in StarCraft 2? Are you a Terran guy?
Aaron, for sure. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Good for you. All right. So program's been pretty well established down in Wichita State. Tell us a little bit about it. You've been there for how long again, you said?
Yeah, I started in this position January of this year, so
Oh,
I'm
okay.
closing in on my first year here with Wichita State. But I grew up here in Wichita, so it's been
Yeah.
kind of a homecoming for me.
Okay. Awesome. So tell us a little bit about the games. Tell us a little bit about your program.
Yeah, absolutely. So currently we have 5 titles that we support at a varsity level. It's going to be Rocket League, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, Valorant, now Overwatch 2, and Call of Duty. We used to have League of Legends. We ended up actually making the decision to swap League of Legends with Call of Duty. So that actually took place over the summer. So we are actually now in the process of building out and recruiting for that Call of Duty team specifically.
Okay. Is there a backstory as to why you dropped the league, or
Yeah,
just not enough players, or?
yeah, and a lot of this kind of happened before I was onboarded. We had a really strong league team, master's level team over the pandemic. Unfortunately, I think 3 of
Mhm.
the players withdrew from school. They just for various reasons. And so we were thinking, is it worth the rebuild process? We know how kind of top heavy collegiate League Legends is. You can have
Yeah.
a team of all challengers and you're not even guaranteed top 16, to be honest. That's just how strong that scene is. And so we're looking at Call of Duty, which is a game I had experience with in San Antonio. The CCL, the College Call of Duty League, has been doing a great job the past few years, and they've been growing, and now they're actually officially working with Blizzard. And so we just made a decision. We said, hey. Let's jump into Call of Duty. We have the interest here on campus. We have the students here who are interested, and let's give it a shot. That's not to say that we won't go back to League of
Yeah.
Legends in the future to add on, but for now, we're committed to Call of Duty.
What what is your most popular game to recruit for,
Ooh,
or what draws in the most players for you?
it's probably. I feel like Smash is always popular anywhere you
Yeah.
go. Um, so I don't want to say Smash. Um, it might actually be Rocket League.
Okay.
It's probably Rocket League followed very closely by Valorant, actually.
Okay.
That's where we see the most interest, and that makes sense, right? In terms of just accessibility, right? Like
Yep.
console-based games or controller-based games, rather. just very easy to jump into. We're actually doing Rocket League tryouts for on-campus students. We're doing that this upcoming Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Oh, there's my assistant Joe in the background.
Awesome.
But Joe might be able to pull up a seat potentially. But anyways, yes. Yeah, Smash is probably popular, followed by Rocket League and Valorant.
Okay. And I forgot to mention at the top of the broadcast here, if you got anybody watching, if you have any questions, toss them in chat there. We'll make sure and get those answered as we go here. So in total, how many players do you have on your team?
Yeah, so we have about 35 to 40 students that we would consider student athletes who just kind of
Okay.
focus on competing. We have about another 10 to 15 students that are student staff volunteers. So these are undergrad students who are, getting applied learning, hands-on learning in various positions: graphic design, commentary, production. And then we have another 4 students at a graduate level from various degrees, and we stipend we have 2 that are technically like actual esports graduate assistants, and then we have another 2 that are stipended as graduate students. So we have
Okay.
students all across, all levels.
Awesome. So, and I just want to make this clear for our audience, not all of those kids are gamers,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
So you got, you got the kids doing the graphic design, you got commentators. They don't have to be super good at a game to be a part of esports.
Yeah, and that's the
which is
beautiful
super
part.
awesome.
And I'm glad you point that out because, like you said, we have students who are very passionate about a certain game. Like we have students who are very passionate about Overwatch, but they recognize they're like, hey, I'm not good enough to compete, or I'm just not interested in competing. But I have these skills. I'm interested in X, Y, and Z. How can I still be a part of the program? And that's where we can go in and meet them in the middle and be like, hey, you may be interested in something that we don't even have a position for technically, but we can go and make that happen. We can go and create those positions, and that way the students can be involved.
Yeah, that's great. How does one go about getting on your team? Say, hey, I'm going to Wichita State next fall. I'm just walking in. How do I get involved with your program?
Yeah, there's a couple of different ways, and obviously we have a very healthy student club on campus as well. It's student led. There are about 150 people right now. For the varsity program, if you're looking to compete, you're applying, you're sending in your application. We're filtering through applications. We're very fortunate. Our teams are in a very healthy state. For some games, we're recruiting at a national level. We have scholarship available, so we're kind of looking to fill very particular roles on particular teams, as well as taking into account like what students are graduating. But yeah, you send in your application. That potentially moves into that initial phone call phase or that Discord call phase where we get to know them a little bit more. If that works out well, we invite them to a tryout phase where the student can then actually, right, get to play with our team, see if they like playing with our players, and similarly for our team to see if they like, the
Yeah.
prospective recruit. And if that all works out, then we move into, hey, if you're a current student, then great, you're set to go. We'll onboard you. But if you're a high schooler or if you're looking to transfer, we'd have you apply to university and then kind of walk the student through that process.
Okay. So anybody on campus there can be a part of that. And say you're looking for a Rocket League player. Is it important for a kid to be a ranked player? You know what? Like, let's just say you're looking for, and I'm not a Rocket League player, so I don't even know what the positions are. But you're looking for a certain position. What are you looking for in a player?
Yeah, skill is definitely a big part of it, but it's not the whole picture, right? Just like with traditional sports, right? You can have someone who's very skilled, on the field, but if they don't have those, personal skills, social skills that you need to be a part of a team, it's not going to work out. And so that's again kind of what we try to figure out in those calls and those in-person meetings and those tryout phases. Right, we're looking, can they communicate? Can they not only provide constructive criticism but also take constructive criticism? Can they just get along well with their teammates? Do they get flustered very easily? Some of these more intangible things that you kind of only pick up on when you actually get to see a player play and interact with other um, players in a high stress environment. So that's kind of what we look for. And I mentioned earlier we're doing the Rocket League tryouts next week. Our goal there is actually to kind of bring in kind of like an academy team. So right now our main
Okay.
team is around a Grand Champ 2 level, which is essentially kind of that highest tier of competition. So we're now expanding and trying to establish that kind of secondary tier of competition where we can
Okay.
develop players and get them involved.
Okay. Awesome. So what does a typical practice session look like for,
Yeah,
let's say Valorant? What does a typical Valorant practice session look like?
sure. Um, so for Valorant, and same with all of our other games, that we try to keep it very purposeful, very structured. Um, Obviously, they play a lot outside of practices, but during practices, I'll break down. For example, if we have a 3-hour block, we may have an outside coach come in that we've contracted through, say, Bedify or some platform, who has already had a VOD to review going into that session. So they may be talking with our team for that first hour. Then for the remaining, say, hour and a half or remaining 2 hours, we have scrimmages scheduled. So we have a scrim block. So they're playing against other schools. We're collecting film for that we can then relay back to that coach or whatnot, or they want to watch that film. If they had a tough round or something, they can talk about that at the end of that session. So we're very purposeful about how we go about practicing.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you're almost like football team. You got your game, you watch your film, you go over things, and you get really uh, deep into how the match went. You're not just playing the game and then going on to the next thing.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
and I think that's what separates, at least in my mind, one of the things that separates a varsity program from your traditional club, right? You have people there that hold the players accountable. Players may not always want to
yeah,
go and watch a tough loss, right? Because it's like, no, I know what happens. Like, no, but you really need to go and watch that
yeah,
specific round, because then you need to, and that's where those other skills come in, right? Can you handle and can you speak about things constructively with your teammates? Those things all come together in those sessions.
yeah. Are you going to watch those videos and actually work to get better, or are you just going to disregard it?
100%. Yep.
Yeah. What do competitions look like? Do you have stuff going on every day of the week? Do you have, in a typical season, let's not talk about travel yet, but in a typical fall season, what does competition look like for you?
Yeah, it's pretty much packed. As you can imagine, with 5 varsity teams, they've all got their own competitions, their own schedules, their own practices. So pretty much every day of the week, we have some form of practice or competition or both, going on from the facility. Um, yeah, it's very packed.
Okay. And you mentioned before we got on the broadcast here, you got some teams traveling. How often do you travel to tournaments?
Yeah, coming out of the pandemic now, we've been able to travel a lot more, which has been great. Um, During the season, I mean, for the past probably 2 or 3 weekends, we've been traveling. We've had one team traveling in one form or fashion to something. About 2 weekends ago, our Valorant team was in St. Louis. Um, about a month ago, we were up in Kansas City. NASCAR had a Rocket League tournament, so we were up there for that. Um, this weekend, so literally tomorrow, Joe, who walked in earlier, he's going to be driving 12 people up to Davenport, Iowa for a Super Smash Bros. Regional there. And then simultaneously, I'm driving our Valorant team up to Kansas City because they qualified for a Red Bull event. And then next weekend, our Rocket League team has an event. Our Overwatch team has an event that they're traveling to as well. So it is it is a lot, but in a good way.
Okay. So talk about the Red Bull event that you're going to in Kansas City. Is that for trophy, bragging rights? Is there a prize pool that goes with that comes back to your program? How does that work?
Yeah, so this one in particular, it's a part of the Red Bull Campus Clutch series, which is like it's actually a global event put on by Red Bull. So they've done regionals across the U.S., specifically for collegiate programs. And so we played in a qualifier earlier in the month. We won one of the qualifiers, which allowed us to get to this stage. And so they've invited us to Kansas City. They've got hotel rooms for the 4 teams that are going. They even offered flights to some of the schools who are further up, because I think potentially our region extended all the way up to North Dakota.
Okay.
Um, so we had some schools that had the potential to fly in. And yeah, it's going to be at the Hy-Vee Arena down there or up there in Kansas City, and they're making a whole day out of it. They're going to have like a media day. They're going to have interviews with the players and all of that. Towards the second part of your question about, do they have the potential to win stuff and what's at stake? If they do well in this one, and they win this one out of the four teams, then they get invited to the USA Nationals, which is down in Arlington, Texas, and that's going to be in mid-November. And I think if they win that event, then there's a decent amount of scholarship money on the line
Okay.
that they can win. And if they do well enough, they get to go to the global finals, which I think last year was in Spain. Um, so there's
That'd
levels
be all
to it.
right.
Yeah, we're hoping to make it far, but yeah, students always have opportunity to win scholarship, and that goes straight back to the students. Any money that they win, whether it's cash or scholarship, we don't touch that as a program. We make sure that goes straight back to the students.
Yeah, and it's good exposure for the kids too, for maybe pro teams to watch
Hmm.
and scout from those events also.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously not every student is looking to go pro, or
Yeah,
to be honest, is good enough to go pro, but you know, every program I'd imagine has a handful of students, one, two, three students, who really are excellent, in the
yeah,
game that they play. And so collegiate, that pipeline is getting developed. It's not there yet,
yeah.
but in the next 2 3 years, um, as we see it develop at all these different levels, that pipeline is starting to get established. And we do see some of these professional teams like EG, Cloud9 developing collegiate divisions, departments within their orgs, because they can see that coming down the road. So they want to get ahead of the curve and establish those relationships with collegiate programs and their students.
That's awesome. So tell us about your space. You have a dedicated esports practice facility, arena. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we actually have two facilities on campus. One is a 20 PC setup based out of our rec building, and that's kind of open to all students. And then actually over the summer for our varsity program, we just transitioned to a new facility going from 7 PCs to now 16 PCs, in addition to a lounge and whatnot. And that's just for our varsity program to practice and compete. So we have access to both of those spaces, and that helps us in terms of if we need more space or we want to do more programming, if we want to do like on-campus engagement events, it's a very tremendous thing for us to have access to.
Yeah. So is that space open? Is it open 24/7? Is it available for your varsity players to get in there anytime to practice? Do you expect them to practice on their own, like in their dorm rooms? What does that look like?
Yeah, our space for varsity is open in this building. I believe currently it's from like 8 a.m. to about midnight every day, and
Okay.
that's kind of when we try to draw the boundaries. Now, obviously, if a match goes longer, we'll have people there that will make sure they're not interrupted or things like that. Um, Generally, it's student preference. Some students prefer to play from the facility. Some like to play from dorms. If they live off campus, some of them like to, practice from home. For the set practices, the teams will usually come to a consensus about, like Valorant, for example. They all want to practice in person. So when
Mhm.
they do have their set practices every week, they come in person to play. Obviously, they're playing as well at home and whatnot. But Overwatch, for example, for us, they don't really care about practicing in person. Um, and also, they kind of live spread out across the city, so it
Yeah.
doesn't really make sense logistically. So they're fine with practicing from their respective homes, but they still have set times and
Yeah.
whatnot.
Okay. So speaking of Overwatch, one of our questions from the Twitch chat was, what does Overwatch look like at the college level now that Overwatch 2 is out?
Yeah, that's something that we're just experiencing now because Overwatch 2 competition has kind of just started.
Mhm.
Um, Obviously, from a literal game standpoint, with it going down from 6 to 5, that's presented some challenges for pretty much every collegiate team out there. Um, Fortunately for us, we kind of went into this was last semester, last spring. We knew, right, this change was coming and that this was pretty much going to happen. So we knew, right, we weren't going to over recruit for the tank role. We didn't want to cut any students, so we kind of just left things how they were. But obviously, letting students know that hey, for this role, um, we're instead of having two players on and one sub, we're going to have one player on and now two subs. And um, you know the the intention there is we don't want to cut any students.
Yeah.
And I think when you take the time to explain it to them and you explain your perspective, then you get that buy-in. And so fortunately for us, we haven't really had any trouble transitioning to Overwatch 2.
Okay. One of the other questions from chat was, do you offer any StarCraft 2 competitions? And if so, how does competitions, what do they look like?
No, and unfortunately, there's we don't do anything with StarCraft 2. Um, I remember again when I was in college, just early 2010s, StarCraft 2 was like the collegiate competition for through
Mm-hmm.
CSL at the time. Um, but yeah, these days, um, we I might do it personally if we do like a charity event or a live
Yeah.
stream. I'll do StarCraft 2 and I'll play against some players and do like a 1v12 or something just for fun. But
Yeah.
unfortunately there's uh, not much if any competition for it right now at the
Yeah.
collegiate level.
Yeah. Okay. Tell us a little bit about about scholarships that you offer for your program. What kind of things are available? You don't have to get super specific, but what kind of things are available for those exceptional students that you want to recruit?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, starting this fall semester, we were able to offer scholarships, esports specific scholarships for the first time. And so
Awesome.
we've actually been able to award out scholarships. And for us, it's not purely based on skill, right? Again, goes into how you recruit players, right? You're not just looking for someone who's just purely a good player. They have to have those other characteristics, and that's the same way we look at when we look at scholarships, right? Obviously, if it's a great player and they fit what we're looking for, and it works out all around, we can come in and in some cases we can our school obviously offers scholarships through the institution, and whatever they have left over, sometimes we can go in and in some cases cover their entire remaining tuition, in which case it constitutes to they're essentially getting a full ride when it comes to tuition. Um, so that's been good for us. But we also offer scholarships not just limited to competitors. So earlier we were talking about those auxiliary positions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Student staff. We offer scholarships there as well. So in some cases we have students who come on and are interested in team management, for example, right? And they have the same financial needs that a competitor does. And if they, if the need is justified and we have the resources, we will always go in and try to help out however we can.
That's awesome. Can you list your games that you guys offer one more time for us?
Yeah, sure. So we got 5 titles at a varsity level. It's going to be Rocket League, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, Valorant, Overwatch 2, and Call of Duty.
Okay. So if you were going to add another game to your offerings, what do you think that next game would be?
Oh, if we were going to add another game, um, as I know Joe's sitting in this room, and Joe was our he coached the League of Legends roster for quite a few years.
Okay.
So I'm sure he would want me to say League. And it is actually something that we're considering because Riot actually created skill divisions now, which was kind of
Okay.
directly addresses the concerns. So League is up there. We get a lot of interest in games like Apex, but Apex unfortunately doesn't have much collegiate competition. Um, Possibly Rainbow Six as well up there. So
Okay.
probably those three if I had to give three.
Three.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, he's highlighting this one. Are there any females on your team?
Yeah, we actually have a good amount of women on the team, which is something I'm very happy about. Um, Obviously, it's nowhere near 50-50, which I know
Yeah.
that's kind of the drive across the nation is all programs. And obviously, right, not just in terms of gender, but diversity inclusion as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
But I know the drive for a lot of programs right now, you got to pick a place to start, and it's trying to get more women in because we know when we look at um, the player base for just gaming in general, it's almost an even split. But when you look at esports and competitive games, that drops off significantly, right? So I think that requires a lot of purposeful programming on our end, purposeful engagement, and how we reach out to women and try to show them that hey, there's other women who are doing this, and we want to encourage them to participate. What we do find, at least with our program here and in programs that I've run in the past, we do see a lot more representation, a lot more interest in not so much competitive positions, but in positions like content creation or streaming or social media management. And we see that reflected in our program as well with where our women are at in terms of their positions. But again, I think that is an unfortunate. I mean, it's good that we're able to provide those positions, but I think that is a result of the stigma that a lot of women have faced, as they grew up.
Hmm.
Um, so hopefully now, as esports develops, we as leaders can go, and for these future generations, right, get them started and more comfortable playing with at an earlier age, right?
Definitely. Yeah, I know if you ever started a Sims 4 competition, my daughter in the next room would be totally up for it. I don't know.
Absolutely,
I don't
absolutely.
remember what the one challenge, like the 100 baby challenge or something in Sims 4. I'm not sure.
That sounds terrifying.
Yeah. What was the COD game that you guys play again?
um, we pretty much play the latest version.
Okay.
So it would have been Vanguard, but I believe now it is.
The next one's coming out next week,
Yeah,
right?
very soon.
Modern Warfare.
Yes,
Modern
yes,
Warfare.
yep. So that is what we are recruiting for. We essentially just follow what the pro scene
What
does.
game comes out? Okay.
Yep.
Um, Someone's asking, what's the average SR on your Overwatch 2 team?
Right now, and I'll kind of just base it off Overwatch 1 because
Okay.
Overwatch 2 ranks are kind
Yeah.
of up in the air. We're hovering around, and I'm going to look at Joe and he can correct me, around 4K, 4.1K SR range. Yeah, Joe's nodding, so that's
Okay.
about right. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Last question for you. Do players bring in their own keyboards and mice for competitions? Is that just kind of a personal preference, or is
Yeah.
that something like when you go to the Red Bull thing? Maybe a kid doesn't have the money for. I would think if they're going to get into esports, they probably got their own keyboard and mouse and headset and stuff. But
Yep, usually they do. We technically have gear on hand for every setup, but what we
okay.
find most of the time is, right, students prefer their own mouse and keyboard,
Hmm.
and so we encourage them. We don't prohibit them from bringing in their own
Yeah.
gear. What I have noticed is quite a few of these travel events or like these Red Bulls or these lands, really the only thing they will prohibit usually is um, when it comes to sound. So they will provide their own headsets, or if you're playing on stage, they'll make you wear like noise
Yeah.
canceling headsets or earphones. But usually, aside from that, you can use your own monitors, in a lot of cases, and your own keyboards and your own mice.
Okay. Anything else that you want to tell us about your program before we wrap it up here?
Anything else about the program? I mean, I think we're awesome. Um, no,
Yeah.
I feel like that's the cop out answer.
Well, you
Um,
have to say that.
yeah, no. Really, I just think we're doing a lot of good stuff. And I know this is usually the time where you'd want to brag about your own program, but just because I'm so involved with collegiate esports as a whole, I see the good work that all programs are doing.
Hmm.
I just feel like we do a good job of supporting esports in Kansas. We do a good job of supporting development esports in our community. I feel like that's what most university programs are trying to do, and so we are definitely in line with that. And really, from my perspective and from Joe's perspective, we're focused on the student experience. We are trying to give students access to an experience that we didn't have when we were in college, and so we're very personally invested in the outcomes that these
Yeah.
students get. I want a student when they graduate 20 years down the road. I want them to look back, whether they're in esports or not. I want them to be able to look back and think like, hey, when I was in college, I got to play Overwatch 2 and I got to represent the school, and that was amazing. I'm going to remember that for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Or, it's something that, hey, because I had that experience in college, I was able to network and get those connections, and now it's led me to where I'm at right now. So, um, yeah, that's kind of how I would describe our program.
Okay. Awesome. So we have state coming up here on November 18th and 19th. Are you going to be there with us?
Yes, Joe and I are gonna plan to be there. We are super excited. I know there's lots of games being played, um, and we pretty much overlap with pretty much all the games there. So I'm super excited to go. And I don't know much about the esports scene in Nebraska personally, so I'm just super excited to go up there, meet other coaches, meet the teachers, the educators in that space, and just learn more about esports in Nebraska.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you it is exploding. So there's lots of good recruiting opportunities up here for you.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I am very excited about that. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, everybody, thanks for joining us tonight. again, our next time we'll be seeing you is in our Twitch stream, probably at State in November. Hope you'll catch us then. Coach, thanks for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. Yeah, and we'll see you next time, everybody.